Hello, this is Creative Project 1. I'm talking about the terrain in this section. So let's go look at the terrain. As you can see, there is 9 different terrain paths. I use 9 different terrain paths to create my overall project. This center island is my main tile, where all the action's happening and where the player is supposed to be. These outer tiles are just supposed to be a boundary for the player. So the user can go outside the center tile, but it's really, there's nothing there. It's kind of, they can go there, but there's nothing there. So I figured it was a good way to barrier off my little piece of land. But I also did not indicate that there was anything outside of the pathways. If we go into the terrain, you'll also start to see different major sections. So you'll have the Witch's area, you'll have the Haunted Mansion, and you'll also have the Graveyard. You'll also see a bunch of different trees that populate this little piece of land. And that was essentially done with a bunch of assets from the URP asset pack and from the Unity Asset Store. But if we all go and look, we can also go see some of the different textures that were used to map flowers around the graves or in significant areas in the scene. So like all this right here, all these different flowers right up here. Jornathan's grave has a bunch of different flowers around it. See, look at all those flowers. And so this was done with the paint detail feature. I tried it with the other paint tree last project, and it dropped my performance significantly, or tanked it at least. But this way, around this time of the project, I got around 30 FPS, so I was doing pretty good. As for terrain layers, you can kind of see I increased the settings for the normal map on here. So if we go over to terrain layers, essentially paint texture there, I upped the normal map scale to provide more detail, more realism. From here, it looks like nothing, but if you go up close up, you can't really tell it's just a repeating texture. It looks hella detailed, and I found that to be very surprising. Any other features in the terrain? I have a wind zone right here, so I also have a gust of, I have a wind zone. It shakes the trees a little bit. It also provides a direction for a lot of the shrubbery to move throughout the scene. That's essentially it for my terrain. I also made this clearly defined pathway so that the user could get from one place to the next, so they know where to go, essentially. And there are fallen trees on the pathway, or fallen trees, or different places where fallen trees are to provide detail. And then there are rocks all around the scene, essentially around the path mostly, to provide the user more detail on where to go and like what to follow. Materials. Walking through it, you can kind of see what I've implemented. So the cauldron material, liquid material, is shiny. This is a different kind of liquid than what was in the actual potion. The potion had its own material from the shader. This is the cauldron material. It's more shiny based. It's less rough, more shiny, or more metallic. Same thing with this. Is cauldron with handles, essentially mimicking the same thing. Corner fencing on the gates. So this also needed to be more metallic and less rough. And you can kind of see how I did that. I didn't exactly use a metal roughness map or anything. Didn't really think I needed to. Then this is the ghost that I had from Modddif, from the custom models. So you can kind of see there are other different. My project's not organized, but you can kind of see how the layout of how I had to go back and forth between the OBJ different GLB files to get the right desired effect I want. Like this lampshade, I had to go back and make it a universal, different type of material essentially, so that it allowed me to place the metallic map on there properly. And then if you go down and look, you can also see I got the emissive map just correctly. So these are all the different textures I had to split out and separate to get the right effects for different things. So if we go down to some of the player guide objects right here, if you look and see, this is all split out from a map, right? This is an emissive map on top of a regular metallic map. The metallic map's providing more of the shiny effect or the darkened metal effect on the outside while not hindering the glass with its metal, with the metallic metallic effect essentially, while the emissive effect is not actually coming out of the metal, it's actually only coming from the glass, which I found to be amazing. I essentially did the same thing with one of the objects which is looking the player's looking for, the jack-o'-lantern. So we go to the jack-o'-lantern. Let's go up here. Around this way. the jack-o'-lantern going right here, turning everything off. You can kind of see I did the same exact thing, even though it allows for some illusion of light coming out, but at the same time, that's only from the point light I added in the scene, which is also real time, but we'll get into that later, or earlier, whatever. And so, like, I did the same thing with this object over here. Emissive material had to be modified ever so slightly. You have to go down into it, the default. Right here, you kind of see there's that, and emissive map as well. So, like, a lot of effort went into separating out the textures that I needed, and then making different materials. Sometimes they had to be the Unity default material, and sometimes they only had to be the GLB formatted material, which I found to be kind of the same, but slightly different. Anyways. Shaders. I used 3 main shaders. One I developed last project for the Lost Island. One I developed for this project, which you see in the game view in the pod. And then I also did not develop the last one. It was developed by the professor, and it's HSL, the water shader that we use in the Lost Island to generate our waves. I essentially mimicked that and added that to the edge of my island, or my piece of land. It's not an island. And then so let's go look at the potion right here. So this is kind of what the potion looks like. It's got some gradient noise on it. If we go up to the shader graph that I used in here, you can see I just added essentially a tiling effect that allows you to move the noise like this in a semi-vertical pattern, and then I multiply it with essentially the semi-filtered out or the filtered out channels R and B channels of the image by multiplying by a certain value. Get this green effect. Multiply that together with the noise. It essentially generates the moving noise on top of the texture, and then I send it into the base color. As for the ghost shader, the ghost shader is the exact same as previously mentioned. However, I used it on this grave, Joy Nathan's grave. Custom 3D models. So for the Creative Project 1, I spent a lot of time. It was actually one of my biggest concerns is creating models for this environment that I thought of this Halloween type environment. What goes well with Halloween, right? And I'm like, first thing came to mind, graveyard. So what did I do? I went to Modddif and I started making gravestones. So as you can see, I kind of went through, made my way, unmarked grave, generic John Smith grave, nice grave decoration, another different characteristic grave that just has no name on it. This is my centerpiece of my graveyard, as you've seen. A lot of these other things, like the angel, graveyard decoration, this cross is another graveyard decoration, this fencing over here, a major aspect of providing the illusion of my graveyard and a boundary for my graveyard. So the same thing with the unmarked grave. So as for the graveyard, that's kind of it. But if you come over here and look at some of the other characters in my scene, so you'll notice that this one and this one aren't actually in my scene. It's because I took a crack at trying to develop my main character, and I came to the reasonable conclusion that this guy was better for it. But the witch, major aspect of my scene. This skeleton soldier, major aspect of my scene. And then this is Joy Nathan's skeleton. He's just roaming around his grave trying to protect his bone, but he's not very good at it. And then this is the just kind of the NPC ghost that I figured that I would have around the Haunted Mansion. So those are some of the NPCs and other objects, other characters in my scene. Witch's Cauldron, I figured she need to have a very specific kind of shape for her object. You can kind of look in and see the texture doesn't really matter all that much. This is the lampshade or lamppost for my lamps that guide my user down their path. It's kind of low poly, as you can kind of tell, but it does the job, and I think it doesn't become a hindrance to the performance. Same thing as you can see, like some of these different objects right here. Those are just lower poly models that I had. Like if I didn't make the modifications to change these, I'd have 100 million or 200 million verses in my project, and the performance would have tanked. Same thing with this bone. I kind of got low polarized. The Witch's Hut, and then you got the Haunted Mansion. There are some other objects that I didn't technically use, so like I only really used this monster candle, but I didn't really use the other 2 variations. I used this as an object for the witch's items to collect. This lamp roll right here, this lamp is super nice. And what Modddif does, it allows you to output a texture. And I went through paint.net and I separated out textures, like their metallic maps and their emission maps, to where they only emit at certain points, or they only become metallic at certain points. It made the bottom turn out super well in Unity, which you saw in the walkthrough, but I'll show you a little later. I didn't use this candle, but it was always good to have extra assets. And these books right here, they provided the witch's area more detail, essentially, and yeah. So, yeah, that's about it. I mean, overall, in Unity, I used over 27 assets, but that's not counting a lot of the low-poly conversions that I had to do. Animations. Let me walk you through kind of what I did. So I started off first by going to Mixamo, rigging up my characters to my NPCs to get all the animations, and then just a matter of making different animation controllers. So if we go in here, you can kind of see this is Joy Nathan's skeleton movement. You can literally just going straight into that walk. The point light, same thing here. This is a custom animation that I made in the Lost Island project, and it just floats an LED point light. Schmitty walking. This is my main character. This is my main character's controller, and so you can kind of see the different transitions. The professor helped me implement the full transition to sprint, from walk to sprint, and without that, I would not have been able to get my video cut down to 5 minutes. But yeah, different transitions here. You can see some of them have no exit time. A lot of these actually, so I had to make these copies of the Mixamo animations, and then I had to add animation events at certain points to integrate sounds and decal events as well. So actually, I didn't use decals in my project, but still. Anyways, animation controllers, or animations, you can kind of see I walked through and tried a bunch of different things. I also used some of the assets from last project to help give me a bigger starting point for this. But like walking through here, you can just kind of see different assets. Like the Witch has her own series of animations, Skeleton has his own series of animations, Nathan has his own series of animations. Yeah, it's a lot. Skybox / environmental fog. So you can kind of see my skybox right here. After a series of searches on Unity Asset Store, I found this skybox, and I'm like, this is perfect. I'm going to choose this, and it's going to be perfect for my Halloween-themed creative project. And so that's what I did. And then I made sure that the lights, directional light, matched what I wanted it to reflect from the skybox. So it does emit some portion of light, but it was at a smaller intensity, so that the character could see throughout the game. But if we go back to the lighting tab, you can kind of see my fog right here. If I disable it, you can kind of see the effect it has. Everything seems a lot clearer, cleaner, more detailed. But with the fog, boom, right? It already provides that darken illusion, that scary factor that I was kind of going for in my scene, and so it does the job. Same thing with the exposed moon right here, or at least the moonlight. It does the job. It'd be nice if those clouds moved, but it does provide a good view. So says one of my friends' reviews. Adaptive Pro volumes. You can kind of see on my screen right now, I'm indicating that I generated the Adaptive Pro volumes, and I'm displaying them this way. You can see they get bigger and smaller and whatnot. I'm going to turn that off. It's taking it. Anyways, there are plenty of things in my scene that I marked as static. So I went to the graveyard area is one majority of things that I marked as static, like all these graves marked as static. Let's see. Yeah, see, graves marked as static. I just made the prefab static, and I went through and did that for... I didn't have to do it. I only did it once. That's the great thing about using prefabs. All these angel statues are static. Graveyard decorations, static. Fencing. So if you go in, you'll see that each individual section's static. You know, so there's that. As for the witches area, bookcases, all these books, static objects. I made sure to go through and change everything to be static, mostly because it doesn't really need to change, because the player can't really interact with them anyway. The witches' hut, static. Cauldron, static. Yeah, mostly everything in the witches scene. Then we go to the haunted mansion area. You'll also see that haunted mansion static, and it's got a few, yeah, haunted mansion static. And then if you look at in the environment, you'll see little lamps you'll see the lamps. All those little lamps are also marked as static. If you go down through here, all static. So, yep. Lighting. Okay, let's get into some of the lighting in my scene. So first we have the directional light, which is providing the overall generic lighting that is required for people to get around in the scene. So I put that at half the intensity it usually would be at, also lowering the the temperature that we're emitting. I want it to be kind of a colder feel. Then you also have a lot of the other different lights that go around the different scene. And so you'll notice, like, if you go to the object here and you go to the particle system, disable that, you can see different lights. That's just the real-time light attached to the particle system, which comes with the option right here, the essentially lights. It creates that flicker, you know, and I wanted it to be like, okay, this is an object I need to collect for the witch, right? I needed some sort of signal that allowed me to collect that. Then you also go to the lampshade, right? Lampshade's providing some aspect of light right here. See different things, different ranges and different intensities, all using these different point lights based on real time, and it's a real time point light. If we go down here, you'll see the jack-o'-lantern. I also essentially added the same kind of effect on the jack-o'-lantern as well. If I can get a close-up view of it. Particle system, adding that kind of effect, that orange effect though, instead of a white. Then if we go over to the essentially the candle, the monster candle, you'll see that there's some light aspect associated with the particle system on it as well. So the particle system doesn't really emit light. However, this point light is going to do it for it. So it's kind of what I did there. And then in the scene you can find generalized lights in the important areas. So like there's like a few around the witches area, you know, right there. Like if you go up here, you can kind of see the effect it has with the potion shader. Creates that nice illusion of like watery type of. It creates a really weird feel, you know. Then we go to the haunted mansion. There's a few lights over there. So haunted mansion there. I wanted the people to be able to see it. But yeah, like the main sources of light are those lampshades. Those lampshades are providing a huge source of light, providing the character from one place to the next. Then you have the directional light plus the different point lights in specific areas, and then you have the particle system type effect with the lights associated with it. So yeah. URP post-processing effects. Let's take a look at what I've done in my scene to show you that I've done some of the URP post-processing effects. So you can kind of see the chromatic aberration in there a little bit. I didn't make it very intensive because it doesn't really need to be that intensive. It's at 0.1 right now, but sooner or later you'll see that. Then you can kind of see, you don't really notice anything right now, but let's show you. There's some motion blur there. But then you go into running, right? You can kind of see the vignette, the lens distortion, and the motion blur that I used in creating the illusion of running. And so I did try to do my best at generating some of these post-processing effects at the right time and providing the right kind of feel, but kind of found it challenging to do get their actual feel because that motion blur is a little weird. Anyways, as for URP post-processing effects, that's it. I can show you them in my Unity view as well. So let's pull it over here. Global volume. So you can kind of see the things I have enabled on there: chromatic aberration, vignette, lens distortion, and motion blur. These are all very useful things that I used in my project. Reflection probes. Looking into my scene, you can see that there are five reflection probes. So looking at this view in the scene right now, you can kind of see how I placed them out in my where I wanted. I tried to place them out intelligently. So like there are a lot of metallic materials down here in the graveyard, and so I figured like a reflection probe would be best served because of the metallic material on the fencing and the overall graves well, not really the graves, but the fencing mostly, and then the shiny material on some of the skeleton soldiers and stuff like that. But if we also go up to the witches area, you can notice like the cauldrons have some sort of reflective shadow like cast on them. See, you kind of notice that a little bit. Doesn't really seem all that right, I guess. Depending on the way you look at it, it might be correct. But I also wanted to try to get the shadow effect, the shiny reflection effect off of the cauldron as well. and that was kind of what I was going for there. And then you'll also notice like some other placed reflection probes in my scene. You can probably guess why those are there. That's because of the lampshades. The lampshades are supposed to be metallic and kind of shiny, so I wanted them to be able to reflect off of like the. I wanted them to just to be able to be reflective, you know? Like, look how shiny that post is, right? It reflects off light. If you look closely, it might be able to reflect off some sort of actual impression from the environment. That was what I was going for with the reflection probes. AI navigation. Let me walk you through kind of what I did. You can see here that this blue surface indicates that a nav mesh surface was baked onto the scene. And the whole scene, by the way. It's not just one area, it's the whole scene. And then each NPC, except for the witch, has an AI navigation component because they move around in the scene. So like the nav mesh agent here. They also have the node follower script on them that allows you to just essentially move the agent between different nodes. And so all I did was rearrange where the nodes in the scene to create the illusion of movement of the NPCs in the grave or the haunted mansion. It's pretty cool. As for anything else more advanced with nav mesh, I didn't really use any links or modifiers. I mean, I didn't really find a need for those yet, but I'm sure I will in the future. Lastly, audio sources. So I went heavy on the audio sources this time around. There are plenty of different areas where I've added an audio source. Like if we go to the potion thing up here, or witch's cauldron right here, you can kind of see I added an audio source with the bubbling kind of effect for the potion. The witch has her own little audio source. She goes, so that's where that comes in. I also had to make sure like the spread was nice and like well distributed throughout the environment. So like a lot of it, the spatial blend was to the max and the spread was to the max. Like Jornathan and the skeleton soldiers all have their own different audio sources making their own different sounds. You know, that's Jornathan's sound. Then you have the heavy metal. This one was probably kind of hard to hear in the demo run. So like that's in there. That's attached to the skeleton soldiers, and I try to make sure that the animation and the walking lines up with the ripple of light armor back and forth. The ghost has its own little effect. It goes, woo, you know. And then there was the spooky winds that I added. This is that you didn't hear that in the scene. There's this one. There's this one. You didn't hear that one either. That was not in there. But this one was in there. So you heard that wind noise. That's in there. So that is a big part of the scene. It was supposed to be taking place in a windy environment. I just now realized that it's kind of very repetitive, and when I was demoing it to my friends, they made sure that's the one aspect that they highlighted upon is the fact that the winds are kind of repetitive. And so the next time I do this, I'll randomize the kind of winds that are happening, make them less repetitive. But I also had to change this refurb zone mix from like 1.1 to this because it was just way too emphasized in the different zones I had to find. You can also see I have different cicada sounds all over the environment, and you hear that in the scene. The Haunted Mansion has its own series of like audio sounds, like that ambient spookiness. That's kind of what I was going for. You approach it, and then you'll hear different bats. Each one of these bat audio sources, by the way, has a different distortion or echo filter on it. The Haunted Mansion has, or at least the Ghost, I believe, has a distortion filter on it. And going back to that, let's go into refurb zones. So going here, let's go look at some of these refurb zones all the way up here. Let's see, here's this. So you can kind of see the different refurb zones I have. So like I was kind of going for a different feel in the graveyard compared to the Haunted Mansion. So if we go look at the Haunted Mansion's refurb zone, it's more psychotic, and the feeling or the sound emitted from the different audio sources was supposed to mimic some sort of scary factor, like making the hairs stand up on your arms. The graveyard is supposed to kind of be the same way in that scenario, and then the witch's area, you're kind of under her illusion. You're helping her out in a way, but like you don't exactly know what you're doing. You're drugged, right? So that's where I got the idea of like, okay, you're in this illusion. You're not really thinking too straight, right? Because you're helping out a witch with her bad potion. And then these forest areas are supposed to help mimic the cicadas, the bats, and the winds that you normally hear when walking through. And yeah, the last audio source I want to mention is the one on the character. The one on the character was probably the most challenging to implement, at least what I found. So what I had to go through, I had to edit the character behavior script to include different aspects. So let's see, or it wasn't that, I actually added a new script, right? Footsteps sound player. And so this provides my audio source for my clip, and then pitch variation, that is key in this scenario. It creates a different variation of footsteps each time, so it's not the same. And it emphasizes the different when it's walking. That's about it. So what I did was I used the footprint spawner from the decal script asset that you had in the folder on Canvas, and I repurposed it to suit my needs for sound. So instead of doing decals, I did sound instead, which I could have done both, but I didn't find a need to use decals in this science scene because feet weren't really being looked at too often. It's kind of more of like what's happening in the environment, where am I, like how do I complete the objective, right? That's kind of what I was going for. Anyways, there are so many sounds, and all this adds up to what I've turned in. The last thing I want to mention before I go off on my own, go to bed, is that you can kind of see this game view thing right here. I thought this was like a major aspect I wanted to include in here because I could not think of a way to be like, okay, players, I need you to do something for me, right? I dump you in this environment. What are you going to do, right? They have no idea of what to do in this environment. So it's like, let's provide them a task, right? How do I do that? Okay, we got the UI for it. Let's give them a start idea. Be like, okay, state the objective. What are we doing in this environment? And then it labels out what and then some text on what you need to do. And you provide a hint. Be like, find these objects and these areas, and then bring them back to the witch, and then you're good. So I figured this was a very good way of providing an informative method of what needs to happen in my island, my world. It's not an island, it's a world.